Hello and welcome to The Green Stream, a podcast brought to you by Sustainable Business Network Detroit, a network of partnerships between Southeast Michigan stakeholders, innovators, and changemakers. Each partner is on a mission to advance and amplify sustainable business practices, and we're here to learn from, share, and help activate a sustainable way forward for Greater Detroit. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review and join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And head over to our website, sbn-detroit.org. Now, let's listen in to our conversation with today's sustainability leaders.
Hi, I'm Terry Barclay, and my day job is CEO of Inforum, but I'm so thrilled to be here as chair of the Sustainable Business Network of Detroit on the Green Stream today. And I am just so thrilled that our guest today is Larry Brinker Jr., who is an award-winning entrepreneur, impact investor, and mentor. He is CEO and president of Brinker, and I hope we're going to hear a lot more about that, Larry, and what you're up to in that role. But Brinker is a group of family-owned and operated commercial construction service companies that are responsible for over $4 billion, I think, in construction projects. And you've been playing a critical role in Detroit's transformation. So I really look forward to hearing more about that. But you also serve as the CEO of the Brinker Family Asset Management Company. And that's a topic that SBND is very interested in as well. So please, Larry, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, Terry, thank you very much for having me today. Once again, I'm Larry Brinker Jr., CEO of Brinker, graduate of the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Go Blue, and I am a native Detroiter. So happy to be here today and talk about Brinker and what we're doing in terms of sustainability and in the community as well.
I really am anxious to jump in because we have a lot. So tell us about Brinker and its focus and construction projects in Detroit, because you've been at the helm of some huge ones.
Yeah, so Brinker was founded in 1989 by my father, Larry Brinker Sr. And his story is just absolutely amazing. It's one of those American stories. He started off as a carpenter's apprentice and worked himself up to become a journeyman and a foreman in carpentry, and decided to start his own business. And so we've been in the city since 1989, and it's been very exciting to really play a part in the revitalization of the city. We've seen the city during some of its great times, some of its very worst times, and now seeing that rebirth has been really, really rewarding. So in terms of some of our projects we're currently working on, we're finishing up the Michigan Central Station for Ford Motor Company. We're also finishing up a very unique project for Bedrock, which is Dan Gilbert's real estate and development company. The project is Book Tower, where we're bringing hotel rooms, which are kind of like long stay hotel rooms and apartments and restaurants and rooftop bars. And it's going to be exciting for the city of Detroit. Those are just a couple that we're wrapping up, and we're beginning about 4 or 5 new projects in the city over the next month or two, and it's just exciting times.
I was really struck whenever I read about your dad and you. I learn new things, and one of the things that has really struck me are the values, that you have as people and as a company. And I know, I don't know if I'm putting you too much on the spot, but, I think that those values come through. Could you talk about those a little bit?
Absolutely. So just based on how my father started the company, it's been a fabric of who we are. It's just part of how we go about daily business. But We recently went through and what I would say revise our company values to make sure that it was easy for every employee to understand. So some of those values are, for instance, having each employee's back, just from the standpoint, we know that we require a lot every day. There's a great responsibility on us to make sure that we're building buildings that will last for the next several hundred years. And so we want to make sure that everybody feels supported. We know that every day isn't always going to be their best day, but if you have a team of support around you, you can always pick up the next person. We also have a big value on integrity. Integrity is something that can't be purchased, can't be trained. It's just really who you are as a person and who we are as a company. We like to do things the right way every time, and not just when someone's looking, but when no one's looking, how do you make those tough decisions that are for the betterment of the company, your clients, your community, and employees? And also just from the community aspect of giving back to people who may not be as fortunate. We feel extremely blessed to be in the position that we're in, but we also understand there is a responsibility that comes with that to lower that ladder down to pull up the next person. And so that's one of our company values, but it's just at essence one of our personal family values. Even I have two young children, two boys who are 19 and 10, and they actually have their own donor advised funds where I'm teaching them at an early age the responsibility of giving back and helping to pull up that next person in the community as well.
That's just great. I remember that in my family, similarly, it wasn't a donor advised fund, but it was volunteering. And at an early age, my parents made sure that we were involved in our community. And it makes such a difference because it sets a pattern, for
Absolutely.
life. I just find all this fascinating. But anyway, I'm really curious, speaking of values, how do you view sustainability from the perspective of Brinker?
Absolutely. So sustainability is a social responsibility that is larger than just one thing. So when we look at, and when I look at sustainability, obviously is the environmental piece, but it's also the community piece. So from the environmental piece, I look at that as things of making sure we're doing certain things such as paying attention to air quality and hazardous materials, and making sure that when we construct our buildings, we're doing everything necessary to better the environment and not hurt it in the process. But then also on the community side, I look at it from a standpoint of social equity, right? When you think about sustainability, it's important to have people in the community to give them access to clean drinking water, for instance, which we look at as something being very simple. But when you look at what has happened in Flint, you look at what has happened in Jackson, Mississippi,
Benton Harbor.
Benton Harbor, these are things that that are a part of the sustainability to me, where it's not just having clean air, but how can we make sure that we're having clean water as well. And even past that, as we build our projects, we make sure that we're properly trained and certified and following the procedures to handle materials that may be hazardous, that if they go into the wrong landfills, for instance, can cause issues with drinking water, can cause air quality issues, et cetera. So it's something that's very important, but it is all encompassing and not just one aspect.
So have there been any specific or projects that you've managed that have had a specific focus on sustainability, where you've sort of developed a case study or advanced the knowledge around sustainable practices in the industry?
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily say a case study, but oftentimes many of our jobs are LEED certified jobs. So it may be LEED Gold, it may be LEED Silver or LEED Platinum. And with those requirements, there are certain procedures and protocols we have to follow to be able to garner points towards that certification. And so that is something that from every job that we do, the beauty of construction, every job is different. Every scenario is different. Even when you think about LEED certified projects, yes, the point system is the same, but how we acquire those points are always different. So I wouldn't say there's a case study, but we obviously, even if a job isn't LEED certified, we try to take as many of those practices as possible to incorporate into every project that we construct.
Mm-hmm. You know, before we went live, we were talking a little bit about the Inflation Reduction Act and some of the recent investments in infrastructure that are coming down the pike, all designed to build a more sustainable and energy efficient economy in the U.S. What roles do you see the construction industry playing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would say with the Infrastructure Act, obviously there's a heavy focus on more civil and environmental components of construction. And so from that perspective, I think construction will play a huge role. When you think about how not only buildings are constructed, but how roads are constructed, how water systems are constructed to make sure that as we move forward, you can provide people with healthy environments, clean drinking water, like we talked about, is something that is very exciting. When you think about the infrastructure of our country, it dates back several years before sustainability was ever really
A thing,
right? And so there's so much work to be done when you look at historically how major urban cities, water and sewer systems were constructed. When you think about the materials that go in that are required to build roads and bridges and how those are created, there's so many different aspects that go into what the final product is. But if we can have a focus on making sure that every one of those pieces of the process are as clean as possible, ultimately, not only are you providing better infrastructure to the country, but also in a manner that is cleaner to the environment, and hopefully, as time goes on, helps the environment and not continues to not continue to hurt it in a way that has been done in the past.
Yeah. I'm so curious there about, I guess, one of the things I really want to ask you is what keeps you up at night? I mean, is do you have, with the knowledge that you have, are you optimistic about that infrastructure, our opportunity to build a better future by improving that infrastructure?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what keeps me up at night is really making sure that our company is staying ahead of the curve. We're not being reactionary, but we're being proactive. And as you've witnessed from LEED to, for instance, the International Living Future Institute and initiatives that they have, these are things that have continually been refined and created in a way where as we continue to think of new ideas and ways to better the environment, our communities, from my perspective, it keeps me up at night to make sure that we're doing everything in our purview that we can do to be the best construction company to help carry that out. And it's not always easy. Sometimes, for instance, as you're building projects that have a huge focus on sustainability, oftentimes the projects are harder, right? It may take more time, it may cost more money. Owners don't always want to pay the additional cost for what's required. So it's our responsibility as the contractor to figure out how we can make these things still happen and not have to pass that cost on to the owner, or how we can still make this happen and not have it be to the detriment of the schedule or commitments that we have for that project. So when you think about, for instance, one thing that we are a huge proponent on is recycling, where there's so much waste on a daily basis that comes out of a construction project that is easy to just throw into one container, send it off to the landfill and never think about it again. But it takes more time to separate the waste and make sure that you're recycling certain things. But we do that because we know it's for the betterment of our community as well.
And I'm not sure that anyone can truly appreciate what you just said unless you've lived through some aspect of a project and you've seen those dumpsters filling up and you've seen, you know, and you start to realize the often invisible and sort of hidden impact and decisions. And as you pointed out, it's time and money.
Absolutely. And even so, for instance, the Book Tower project that we're close to wrapping up now, at its height, there were over 400 skilled trade workers on the project at one time, right?
Wow.
When you think about being in a building with 400 people who are individually generating X amount of waste every day, it's not a small number that we're talking about when we say, hey, there's waste being generated from a construction project. So when you think about what it takes to separate drywall from metal piping or metal studs and what can be recycled and what can't, there is a full process that goes into place to make sure that happens.
Wow. Yeah, that's 400. Wow. I'm sorry, I'm just processing that for a minute here, you know, thinking about that.
Yeah,
That's really amazing. You know, Larry, and the other thing I really want to ask you about, and I'm sure this also has its roots in your family connections and values, is your role in equity efforts throughout Detroit. Could you speak a little bit about your mentorship and scholarship programs and maybe provide a couple of examples of the impact that work has had?
Yes. So as I stated earlier on, I don't believe I would be sitting in this seat today if my father didn't have some of the opportunities that were afforded to him through mentorship and just, quite frankly, giving him fair opportunity to do what I would say do great in the world, right? Oftentimes what happens is due to lack of exposure or lack of opportunity or lack of resources, people just don't have the opportunity to start a race at the starting line. Sometimes there's multiple barriers they have to jump over to just get to the starting line. And the one thing that we've recognized is as much as we can help bridge those gaps and kind of remove those barriers as best as possible, it gives people so much more hope and opportunity. And I say that because we've created mentorship programs where one, for instance, is a program that we created when we were building the headquarters and practice facility for the Detroit Pistons. We oftentimes saw that other minority-owned businesses who weren't of size or as big as we are, oftentimes didn't have the opportunity to participate on some of the projects that we worked on. And we felt bad because, yes, we're a minority business. Yes, we want to see the next minority business have opportunity as well, but it was just a different level of resources and skill sets. So what we did was created a program where we partnered with like the Michigan Minority Supplier Diversity Council.
Mhm.
We partnered with the city of Detroit. We partnered with the state of Michigan to identify minority-owned businesses, mainly in Detroit and the Tri-County area, to give them an opportunity to submit a RFQ. That we had a list of questions, and then we shortlisted from that RFQ, and we provided a RFP for them to answer. And our main focus was to find businesses who were serious about growing their companies the right way, right? And so then we did interviews where we brought them in, and from the interviews, we selected one company for every self-performed company that we have. So from drywall, glass and glazing, carpet and flooring, electrical, and we selected one company that we could bring in to mentor for that project. So what we did was we brought in the ownership group and project managers to learn from us how we did our banking, our bonding, our insurance programs, our risk mitigation, our estimating, our project management. And then for their skilled trade workers for the field, oftentimes what would happen in the past is people would carve out a small area of a project and say, hey, just go work on that. What we did was we integrated their field staff with our field staff. So they were learning from our journeymen, they were learning from our foremen in a way that when the job was completed, they were truly a better company. And so that was one program that we put into place. We also created a program in partnership with Ford and our joint venture partner, Chrisman, for the Ford Fast Track program, where we identify cohorts of adults who were interested in working in construction. And in lieu of sending them to an offsite pre-apprenticeship program that taught them about construction, we brought them into our project at the Michigan Central Station, and all of our contractors working on that project had individuals who were a part of that cohort. And we typically do two cohorts per year, but they work for the companies on site. They're training on site on our project. And then once they complete the program, the companies are typically hiring them to continue working on site for the Ford or at the project at that point. So what happens is we're not only training people on site to acquire the skills necessary, but now they're seeing their dreams become reality because they're continuing to work for that company on site. So that's been super exciting as well. And then we've also created scholarships during COVID. I can tell you, fortunately and unfortunately, I was one of the first people in Michigan with COVID. I was one of the first 65, unfortunately. But I was fortunate enough to be okay. And through that, though, I had many associates and some friends who unfortunately didn't make it through. Yeah. And it drove me to create a scholarship program for children who were in college, who lost a parent to COVID during that time. I wanted to step up and help them be able to continue their dream to get through school. And that was born through one of my best friends was in med school after we graduated college, and his father suddenly passed away, and unfortunately he had to stop going to med school to take care of his family because he couldn't afford to continue on through med school. So that was something that really stuck with me. And for the COVID piece, I wanted to make sure that I was helping someone who went through a terrible tragedy like that to hopefully press on and continue forward. And then I've done other scholarship programs the same way, where one that I'm extremely proud of is I was on a board for a nonprofit that took great kids who were great kids in bad situations. Parents may be deceased or incarcerated. We put them into a boys' home and a girls' home during the week. The boys went to Brother Rice and U of D, and the girls went to Marion and Mercy. And I took a group of 12 students up to the University of Michigan, and I introduced them to the admissions director. We did campus tours, and the director had an opportunity to hear their stories. And out of the 12, one student had the courage to apply to Michigan. And she ended up getting in to Michigan and went on to become the president of the Black Student Union. She graduated and is doing well in life. But if it weren't for me taking the time out of my day to take them up there, she may have never had that belief that she could go to Michigan and graduate from the school. So that was one that was really heartwarming, and just how I love to see the impact that comes out of my time. It's not just about writing a check or anything else, but really providing that mentorship and time as well.
Wow. That's all I have to say. And thank you. What incredible examples. And that is what mentors do, right? They see things in us that we don't yet see in ourselves, and help us open some of those doors and make some of those connections that provide an opportunity to walk through. And truly, truly impressive. I'm really speechless to be honest, Larry. I mean, that's just really incredible stuff. It strikes me that, well, first of all, we're so lucky to have you here in our town. But it strikes me you have some models here that you could take on the road.
Absolutely.
Because, your company is, of course, growing, expanding so rapidly. So I can see the opportunity to magnify the impact of your work and your leadership in other places too. It's really, really fantastic.
Thank you.
So are there any standout examples of best practices in sustainability that you've come across over the course of your career that have really inspired your work? I mean, how did you get pointed in? I mean, how did this happen? How did you,
I would say, for me personally, one of the best practices is when you can figure out how to have your passion and your purpose intersect, right? And so I say that because, for instance, and when I say we, my family, we recently invested in a company out of Brooklyn, New York called Air Company, which was one of our first investments in our family office. And Air Company is amazing. They capture CO2, right, out of the environment. So we capture it, and there's a process where I'll break it down as easy as I can and just say they add hydrogen to it. But there's a full process to it that converts it to ethanol. And that ethanol base is then used for vodka. It's used for sustainable air fuels, so jet fuels. We're providing jet fuels to United Airlines, the U.S. Air Force, JetBlue, Virgin Airlines. We create vodka, we create hand sanitizer, fragrances as well. And we are pretty close to rolling out glucose as well. So to create sugar out of CO2, right? Now, what's exciting is for every bottle of vodka, for every fifth, it does the job of 8 trees over the course of 1 year, right? So it's things where we can better the community while also having it be a real business, but it's something that really is helping to advance our country. When you think about us working with the U.S. Air Force, we're literally putting a sustainable air fuel in billion-dollar jets and multi-million-dollar jets to offset carbon emissions throughout the course of their work, right? So there's things like that I look at that inspire me, where I love the fact that we can recycle on construction projects, but I also love that I can help through my capital and invest in companies that are doing good for the world in a way where, yes, I could still be in business and make a return, but I know that ultimately it is fulfilling my passion as well.
Another really impressive set of work and that you're doing there as an investor. I mean, that's really powerful. That's really interesting to think about. You know, we all know people who buy carbon offsets for their air travel, you know, but this is kind of another way of going at that.
Exactly.
You know, that's
Exactly.
really, really, really fascinating.
Yeah, and then even past that though, like when you think about, for instance, just efforts that developers have of being zero net. That's something that truly inspires me, and I look at it because I know it's so difficult, right? And it's something that has been achieved, and we see that, but it takes developers being very intentional and willing to go that extra mile to do so. And I'm hoping through the course of, as we continue to build new and exciting buildings, that we can figure out ways to help to achieve that zero net at a cheaper cost than what it may be today. But those are things that like drive me and push me to want to do more and do better and figure out ways that we can help be a great team player to our clients and the community, as I said before.
I love it because all of this is dealing with like the core issue. It's not just trying to throw resources sort of after the fact.
Right.
It's
Right.
trying to get at the root cause, the solutions, you know.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's not the easiest conversation to have, right? But what we try to do is with our clients, we understand that there are budget limitations, but also it's our responsibility to advise our clients that sometimes your like lower first costs may end up costing you more money in the long run. But if you spend more upfront, not only can you save money on the back end typically, but also as it relates to sustainability and zero net, sometimes it costs more on the front end, but your impact on the environment, on the community, on the back end outweighs whatever that first cost was as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I can totally see that. That's really interesting. So given all of this, and you know, I know that we're going to have to, you're a busy person. We're going to have to wrap this up. But what do you see as the role of sustainability in the future of the city of Detroit? You know, is this a place where Detroit is uniquely positioned to have, you know, to be a beacon and to make an impact and to be an incubator for this great change?
Yeah, so that is an exciting question to answer, because this is where you'll see my passion really shine through. I look at Detroit as literally being the epicenter. When you think about historically, we've been known as this manufacturing city, right? So when you think about the big three and the global impact that the big three has, right? Globally, not just in our country, but globally. And I think about projects that we're working on, such as the Ford Michigan Central Station, and the purpose of that building being really for the next generation of Ford and what their mission and goal is in terms of electrification of vehicles, et cetera. When you look at the like goal that General Motors has put in place, to me, I look at Detroit having a huge role going forward on sustainability in terms of not just locally, but globally in a way that now you are taking vehicles that have historically had emissions that have played a part in what I say the detriment to our environment, that now they can completely change that to become a positive, is something that's super exciting. And it's a feeling of knowing that you're a part of this community that will affect our world in totality is something that's super exciting. So to answer your question, absolutely. Like Detroit is primed to be a major player, if not the largest player, when you think about sustainability going forward. So I love it, and I'm excited to see what's to come as well.
Larry, thank you so much for joining us today and really taking the time to share your passion for this issue, but some really inspirational, concrete examples of making a difference in this area, and not just for sustainability, but for the city of Detroit and for the people who are part of this really great community. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks again, Terry.
Thank you for tuning in to the Sustainable Business Network Detroit, the Green Stream podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure to follow us on sbn-detroit.org and stay tuned for more conversations on sustainability from inside and around the city.